Company culture, corporate culture, and your workplace. And when you now think, oh, that's basically the place where I don't want to be at all, then you're exactly right where we are here today. We have an expert exactly on how to fix your workplace with us here today. Hello and welcome, Mel Blackwell.
Thank you, Niels. It's happy to be here.
Thank you very much for taking the time. So you wrote the book about how pretty much people can fix their workplace, the uncommon sense. While most people say you need common sense, you say uncommon sense. How to fight to fix your workplace culture in the wild west of business. And probably, most likely anyone will say, yeah, wild west pretty much is what it is. The question is, how can they fix it when they say, well, maybe I'm not the CEO, I'm not the senior executive, so I can't fix it. Or can I? What's your take on that?
Yeah. Well, it's a loaded question because I do believe that the onus is on the senior leadership and the middle management to create that culture.
Mm-hmm.
But I believe the way you get a dynamic culture is one person at a time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's by encouraging people to be the best version of themselves. And then encouraging everyone together, hey, let's do the best work we've ever done together right here, right now in our career. And
Mm.
so it is transformational. It is top down, but it has to bounce. And so everybody, anyone who's in leadership can take that mantle and start pushing their bosses to say, let's live up to the things you guys tell us every day, right? So your standards, your core values, your mission statements, these are things that if they resonate with you, you enjoy working there. But then
Mm.
you hold each other accountable. So that is an element in uncommon sense, and it is kind of uncommon sense, right? It's common sense that we quit using, and therefore it's become uncommon. But I
Yeah.
believe that best pledge in my book would be where that person should go, and it starts with me, right? I want to be my best self at work and at home and in my community, and I want to
Mm.
work for people that want to do the same thing. And then if we join together and say, hey, let's do something special. We believe in this vision. Let's get on the same side of the rope and let's try to do something special at work.
Yeah, I think that's really powerful. Also, I of course, when we got in touch, I of course looked at your CV. I mean, you've been there, you've done that, you've been in the
Yes,
C-suite, senior executive, etc. So you are talking about something you've done by yourself. When you now say
yes.
it's important to create a problem solving culture, many people, and of course, when I prepared for this interview, they said, "Look, I see certain problems, and as soon as I address them, the thank you note is I get them on my table, and I have more work to do than ever before. And when I don't fix them, I get blamed for not fixing it." So, how, in your
That's right.
opinion, does a problem-solving culture really looks like?
I thought you addressed this well in your toxic podcast. So it's these things are not always and never true, right? And so I try to be provocative to get people to think, to work together, what I call on the same side of the rope. And
Mm-hmm.
so, if you think of a tug of war in business, sometimes you feel a resistance. So the problem solving culture starts with one simple rule. And most of what I learned, Niels, was because I was screwing things up, trying to figure out how to unwind what I didn't do right when I was young. And I came up with a philosophy that if someone could bring me a problem, I would ask them, take a little more time and attach a solution to it. So
Mm-hmm.
it became transformational. I tried it and it changed the culture. And I was like, wow, people are hungry to solve the problems that they should. And this was to your point. They shouldn't have to solve the problems somebody else should solve. And so it starts with this random concept of only do your job. And if you think about the best teams, you and I were talking a little bit about ice hockey. Think about the best teams. Every player does their job. Now, they will cover for each other and they'll help someone recover if they slip. But in the end, the most powerful culture is the one where nobody's doing anyone else's job, but everyone's doing their job.
Mm.
And so the problem solving culture is simply to try to figure out how to get the problems pushed down as close to where they exist as possible. And I have a concept that I call the good shepherd, right? So if you read Uncommon Sense, it sounds like, wow, this guy's kind of tough, but it's only as a shepherd. The shepherd is tough when he's dealing with the wolves or a
Mm-hmm.
sheep that's like, hey, you're going to get hurt if I don't help you, or you've gotten lost, let me help you. So he's tough sometimes. That's why I call it the Wild West. But if you allocate problems to be solved in the business as close to where they reside as possible, people become empowered, and here's the thing though, you have to remove the obstacles
Mm.
for them. Because if I have the power, that's my job. So I hand you a problem, or you bring me a problem with a solution, and I'm like, Niels, go do that. So there are
Mm.
three things you have to do in that culture. One is you have to remove obstacles, which include red tape, other people resisting it, people in the business that would try to sabotage, toxic people. But the other thing is you have to allow them to make mistakes. So I
Mm.
have a concept in my book that my brother taught me when we were kids called "If you're not wrecking, you're not riding," and we learned that riding motorcycles. And he was older
Oh.
than me,
Mm-hmm.
so he would wreck and come back so happy. And I was 4 years younger, and I would be like, "My gosh, you wrecked Uncle Roland's motorcycle."
Mm.
And he would get off his motorcycle, fix the handlebars, and get back on and look at me, kind of like Ricky Bobby in that Talladega Nights movie.
Yeah.
And he looked at me and said, Mel, if you're not wrecking, you're not riding. And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, he's crazy. But
Yeah.
in business, it's true. But you have to create a culture where people can make mistakes. You're
Mm.
mentoring them, they recover, and they grow. And so that's
Excellent point.
a long picture of how you
Yeah.
create a problem solving culture.
So that probably
The
goes
reason you do
against
it,
what many.
Nils,
Yeah.
I said the reason you do it real simple is because if problems flow up, you might be succeeding in business, but you're choking, right?
Mm.
You're choking your bosses, and it's their fault. They should push the problems down and help you remove obstacles and solve them.
Yeah, absolutely. So that probably goes against the idea what some people think that as a leader, you have to be strong, you have to be telling people what to do, you have to check in every day or every other day what they're doing, you have to control them, you have to get them back in the office every single day. You would say that's not an up-to-date leadership culture.
I would think that I think that where I might could help people is your role. The higher you go in an organization, you're a shepherd.
Mm.
And the more you give, the more freedom you give to grow, the more responsibility you give away, the more credit you give away, the more times that when they fail, you stand beside them. When they succeed, you push them out front. And
Mm.
that's more of a shepherd's mindset. And so the more they can do on their own, the more you can do your job. And that's where if you come back to a couple of things, I'm going to do my job. I'm not going to do anybody else's job. Everybody in the business can say that, but we are going to cover for each other. And
Mm.
then secondly, we're going to remove obstacles and take care of people and give them some room. Give them
Mm.
some. If you don't let people, I'll tell you a quick story. When I was a little kid, the way these things happened to me was that I lived something and I thought, how can I create language to communicate this to people?
Mm.
Because I was always into stress cultures or startups. So people
Mm.
might listen to me or read my book and go, wow, my business is not nearly this disruptive, or my business doesn't have as many people struggling and fighting over things. But for me, I walked in and somebody said, hey, I can't, my business is in a disruptive state. What can I do? But when I was a kid, I would try to keep up with my brother on my bicycle, just a little bicycle. And when
Mm-hmm.
my chain came off, I couldn't put my chain back on.
Mm-hmm.
And so my brother would come back, put the chain back on because he wanted to hurry, and then I could ride again. Well, I was not growing. Okay. It was very kind of him to come put my chain back on. But I didn't. What he did one day is he came back and said, watch me. I'm only going to do this one more time. You
Yeah.
need to learn how to put your chain back on. Now I put my chain back on and I developed freedom. I
Mm-hmm.
could I could go. Now then guess what happened? I could go further and get lost in the woods. So those every time you solve a problem and grow, you just grow into a bigger, more capable problem. And I
Mm.
think that's our role in business is to develop people.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we should do.
Mm, absolutely. What would you now say if someone says, because there's one chapter which you call creating a pony up culture. When someone now says,
Yeah.
look, I work in this huge corporation. Who am I here to say I am going to change that? I'm probably one of 400 managers in this huge organization. When I now
Yeah.
suddenly change, maybe they just take me out of the equation suddenly. What would be your take on that approach if someone says, I think I just can't change it. It just is as it is.
Well, first of all, I really like the way you approach things because I do think you fight for those people, and I think it's valiant. It's tough. You have to stand for something, and that's what the pony up culture is. And if you are working in a culture where being your best self is punished, then I think you have to circle back to yourself and say, do I really want to settle to work here?
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes you have to. We need our jobs. I've stayed in jobs before that I hated because I couldn't. I had kids. I had to do things, and so
Yeah.
I think you do the most you can. There's an old saying by a gentleman, Art Williams, that was one of my mentors, and he was an interesting guy, and I won't go into him, but he always said, all you can do is all you can do, and all you can do is enough.
Mm.
But he was the hardest, toughest guy. He didn't settle for anything. He was the most excellence driving human being. But deep down inside, he knew that when you get the most from somebody, it's enough. And in the season, sometimes people can't do as much. If you're recovering from surgery, if your parents have died, if you've just had a child, you might be somewhat distracted. And so whatever someone's going through, like you're saying, I think you go and you apply the best pledge to yourself. I will be the best person I can be, the best version of myself. And that's personal. My version of what's best is not your version. So we're not talking about me putting my values on someone, but based on your definition of your very best self, be the best dad, be the best mom, be the best spouse, be the best in community, be the best at work, be the best coworker. If you do that, it's unreal how it ripples because people are hungry for that.
Mm.
I became a best practice warrior because that's the only way I could survive in these distress environments is to try to get the best from everybody so that we could get out of mediocrity.
Yeah.
But you don't do it by hammering them. You do it by building this viral thing. And so I guess what you do in that scenario is you do the most you can.
Mm.
And you may have to assess in my career, should I go find more people that want to do their best?
Yeah.
Are they holding me back?
Yeah.
But it's tough.
Yeah.
Tough.
And that is your best pledge, which you also describe in the book, right? The best pledge.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Excellent.
And it's funny, Niels, on that, I used it for 20 years and didn't call it anything. And then as I was writing the book, I said, I've got to figure out what I did. And I'm like, this was a best pledge. And so I trademarked it. Yeah.
Excellent. It's a really powerful chapter. This book in as a whole is really powerful. So when now people say, hey, I think Mel can be really of help for us, either, for example, as a consultant or as a speaker for a conference or in any other way, when they want to reach out to you, how can they get in touch?
Well, if you go to melblackwell.com, you can actually click a button there to get on my calendar, and we can have a 30-minute call, just a discovery call. I don't charge for that. And on there as well, you can ping me for anything, speaking or whatever. And I'm glad to help. Yeah.
I think these are the perfect final words. So you see, when you have a workplace culture where you say, probably we should do something about that, read the book, get in touch with Mel. These are the perfect final words. Mel, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Niels.